of voting itself, the actual process of voting itself, and not taking the kind of mechanisms of democracy for granted. We are in a time where we are seeing across this world and even in our own country a lot of anti-democratic forces. And so I was raised in a household that really focused on not just who we were voting for, but the process of government itself and civic engagement and educating ourselves about those things prior to any kind of voting. And so I'm so delighted that we have coming up this evening one Helen Hutchinson, who is the past president, an active member of the League of Women Voters of Oakland. She's been a league member since 1969 in a number of communities around the country. She's a past president of the League of Women Voters of California and a current member of the board. Professionally, she's a retired computer systems analyst and an active member of Montclair Presbyterian Church in Oakland and a foster care volunteer with the East Bay SPCA. And she will come and give us a presentation regarding ranked choice voting, after which she and I will have a conversation concerning ranked choice voting and other matters. And then, of course, as Peyton has said, you can put your questions in the chat box, to which we will make sure, and when time permits, of course, to give to Helen or myself, and then have a few closing remarks. I feel like saying amen, but I would be remiss if I didn't just start. This is in conjunction with Faith in Action, just to start off with just a brief petition before we begin. Oh God, our Creator and Sustainer and Provider, we are your people, and we recognize the gift and the treasure that is democracy. And it is not always an easy path for democratic ideals to be fostered in our communities, in our nation, and in our world. Open our hearts and our minds this evening that we might have a discussion to think through ranked choice voting, to think through where we are in the trajectory of our ancestors in this day and in this moment here in the Bay Area. We ask your continued blessings and your peace be upon us. This is our prayer. Amen. To my sister, Helen.
Thank you so much, Pastor Sales, and thank you to Faith in Action for hosting this. I'm really excited to be able to talk about ranked choice voting. I'm going to share my screen, and I hope this works. There, so we're sharing. So yes, thank you to everybody for being here. And I'm going to start with just a really brief history. Oakland historically used a primary and then a general or a runoff election system. And not infrequently, candidates were actually elected at the primary election because they received more than 50% of the vote. This was concerning to some of us because the primary electorate was far less representative of the population of Oakland. It was older and whiter. And even when no one won, non-traditional candidates generally were eliminated in the primary. We had a growing amount of negative campaigning. And you know, when a winner is chosen in the primary, it's also a very long time before somebody actually took office. You know, generally that's June to January. And there's also a cost to the city of running two different elections. That's kind of a minor concern here. So a coalition came together because we were looking for some changes. We were looking specifically for an alternative kind of election system that would ensure that the election would be decided by the most representative group of voters that we could have. And also we wanted to do anything that might help reduce negative campaigning. Okay, and so now why is it not moving? I'm trying to get my slides to move. Sorry. Okay, so the alternative that we found was called ranked choice voting. It moved the whole election to November with no primary and only one single election. And in November, we have a more representative group of voters in Oakland. It's not absolutely representative of Oakland, but it is more representative than in the primary. What happens is the ballot shows all the candidates and we mark our first and second choices. And a change this time is that we're going to get to have up to 5 different choices as opposed to 3. So if, for the mayor, we're going to see 10 candidates and be able to make our choices there. There's lots of different ways to think about this. I like ice cream, and so I like this analogy that I'm going out for ice cream, and what flavor would you like me to get for you? And if that first choice that you have isn't available, what would be your second choice? And so on down the line. So that's the kind of the gist of it. We'll come back to this in just a minute. And so now we're going to have a short video about how it works. And because the ballot counting is a little bit more complicated than actually the way we vote. So let's watch this video and see that this works.
Pick your favorite color.
The ranked choice voting way.
Instead of voting for just one color, you get to rank your top 3.
Well, purple is the best, but if I can't have purple, I want blue. And if neither of those wins, I guess I can live with orange.
Now, let's count up everybody's votes.
Under ranked choice voting rules, it's not enough just to get the most votes. You need a majority.
More than 50% of the votes.
Purple's ahead, but it has only 7 votes.
It needs at least 11 to win.
So we eliminate the color in last place.
Sorry, orange fans, we're going to your second choice.
2 more for green,
1 for purple.
but no color has 11 votes yet.
Still no majority.
Bye-bye,
blue.
1 more for purple,
4 for green.
and we have a winner.
The ranked choice voting way.
So that was a very short video that talked about how ranked choice voting works. And just, the summary is the first round of counting is really simple. Everyone's first choice votes counts. And if someone has more than 50% of the vote, the election is over and that person is the winner. If no one wins in that first round, then we eliminate the person with the lowest number of votes. And any ballot that with that person as the first choice, we take the second choice and count everybody again. And that just keeps going. So let's see if I can get to the next slide here. Oops, sorry, I don't want to play that again. So how does this work for candidates? In the same way that traditional campaigns work, candidates ask for people's vote and you want their first choice vote. But in the change, in this case, they should also acknowledge that if you aren't going to vote for me for your first choice, would you vote for me for your second choice or your third choice? And sometimes we get teams of candidates that say, vote for any of us in any order, but vote for us. And there is also then the campaigns that say, vote for anybody but. And because you want if you're running for office, you want people's second and third choice votes, it makes it more problematic to say bad things about any of the other candidates. Our history in Oakland is that candidates who focus only on the first choice voting, using that traditional campaign tactics, don't do as well as candidates who ask for first and second and third and fourth and fifth choice voting. We have a quote from one candidate that says, when you're walking through a neighborhood and you see a sign for an opponent, you don't pass it by. You run up the stairs. This is a politically engaged person and you want their second choice vote. So, and then the strategy for voters is a little bit more simple. I like to say with your first choice, you vote with your heart. Who do you really love? Or at least who do you really like the very most? And your second choice, you can vote more with your head. If your first choice is eliminated, is there somebody you still like? And then third through maybe fifth choice votes, who can you live with? who, hold your nose, but who could you live with? And finally, you don't have to make 5 choices. You can choose only 1 or 2 or 3, whatever you choose and how many people you can live with. When it stops there, then you should stop. And with that, I think we're going, I have one final slide I want to share here. Sorry. Voters Edge. I'm going to do one last plug because I'm with the League of Women Voters. I want to plug the votersedge.org website. It's a source for everything you need to know about what's on your ballot. And it's put together by the League of Women Voters of California and MapLight. So you put in your address and you see everything that will be on your personal ballot, nothing more and nothing less. And it includes information both on the candidates and the ballot measures. And with that, I am going to stop sharing. And so we can start talking, Pastor Sales.
Thank you, Helen, for that presentation. Again, this forum was put together because although we know in Oakland we are about to have a mayor's election that utilizes ranked choice voting, we thought it was very important to just talk specifically about ranked choice voting itself and some of the reasons why Oakland has moved to ranked choice voting. This is also a move that other cities and locations have done. And so before we vote, to really take stock of what this vote actually is, because this is not the same kind of vote that we would do in a presidential election. It's a different kind of vote. And to really understand, to exercise our power as a voter, we really need to know how this vote works. So I have again, I want to reiterate and ask Helen again a practical question, because in a lot of our elections that we're used to having, we just like one candidate, and this is the candidate that I'm voting for. And so I would ask you, how does that strategy kind of work in ranked choice voting, and to really think about what one could also do besides just having this one candidate or bust.
So for ranked choice voting, you get to vote. You don't have to vote strategically with that single vote. You can say, there is somebody I really love and I really think would make a good person. I don't think they're going to win because there's not enough, they're not well known enough, but I really want to give my support to that candidate. You get to vote for that candidate for number 1. So that's why I say vote with your heart for number 1. And then if that person doesn't win, who else is there out there that you think might fill the office, down to the point where you say, who could I live with in that office? So you get to rank all the way down through that. As I said, hold your nose, who could I live with? But maybe not hold your nose, but who is it that could be in that office and still be okay with you? Mm-hmm. And if there are 5 choices, you get to make them. That's great.
So then the onus is on us as the voter to actually get to know each candidate and their policies, rather than just saying this is the one person I like. That if I'm really taking stock of this, because I think what you said is, and this is the thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, in ranked choice voting, if my number 1 does not get elected, but I didn't put anybody else on the ballot, the person that I may not really like might actually get more votes, and then they actually are the ones who become elected. And so it is to my advantage as a voter to actually think about which candidate's policies align more with what I'm actually thinking about. And so it's not just the personality, but the policies of each candidate. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Do you rank them from the person you love the most, the candidate you love the most, down to the candidate you can just live with in that office? So okay. You get to rank through that from love to I can live with them.
And you said too that the system at times is not as polarized. Can you explain why there's less polarization than in some of our other kind of contests?
So in ranked choice voting, because if I'm a candidate, I want people's first choice votes, but I also want people's second and third choice votes and on. It does not serve me well as a candidate to say, don't vote for Pastor Sales because he's kind of a crummy candidate. If I start talking badly about you, then people who really like you aren't going to vote for me for their second choice.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, I can't say there's no negative campaigning, but there's less negative campaigning.
Right. And we understand that. And so
Yeah.
part of this is to think about, you know, one of the hopes of this is that it fosters us to have debate on the issues and not necessarily the personalities of I don't like them or this person's crummy, because we do have to think about the kind of policies and things like that. And it is disadvantageous if there are people who really like you and I talk bad about you, those people now may not want to vote for me at all in any ranked choice. And so then yes. I see Peyton has a hand up.
Yeah, we have a question in the chat as well, kind of in a similar vein. Can you vote for just two candidates? Do you have to fill out all the way through, or can you vote for just two?
If there are only two candidates that you think you could live with, then just vote for the two. And I also see that it asks, can you vote for the same candidate twice? You can, but it doesn't do any good, because if that candidate is eliminated in the counting, then your ballot is eliminated. So it is, if there are candidates you could live with, rank them in there. If there's somebody you really don't like, don't put them on your ballot.
I think we see another question, Peyton. You want to?
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a follow-up. So they ask, so the person who has a plurality, a lot of votes, but not a majority of the votes, the majority being 50% plus one, in the first round may not win.
That is absolutely correct. We saw in that demonstration from choosing the colors that purple was ahead at first, but then more people's second choice votes were for which was it? I can't remember what color.
Green.
Green, I think green. More people's second choice was for green. So the green ended up winning. And, you know, we've seen that happen in Oakland, where somebody's ahead from first choice votes, and then they don't win because more other people get more second or third choice votes. Yes. And it does have to end up getting the number of ballots. Whoever wins has to have a 50% plus one of the ballots being counted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if I may ask, how does this include a larger population of the voter electorate?
That's a great question. And it does, because we have more people turn out in the general election, the November election, than we do in the primary election. So traditionally in Oakland, in primary elections, we have fewer people turn out. So that's just basic numbers. And we have the people who do turn out tend to be older and whiter. So they look more like me than like the rest of the Oakland population. And we want to have as many people as possible making these important decisions about who's in charge of our government.
Can I ask something too? Because
yes.
Also too, normally when there isn't a majority in many elections, in a fall election, you'll have a runoff, and those runoffs too are also, there's also less voter turnout in those runoff elections than in the actual November election as well. So not just.
I mean, Oakland didn't have runoffs from November.
Okay.
So we
you.
did, the November election was the runoff, but but we were down to just two candidates, and those two candidates tended to be more traditional candidates. So we had less chance for people to vote for our non-traditional candidates.
So you had a situation where the primary decided really the actual general election.
Yep. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I believe there may have been a race just in this past primary season that was decided like that. both in Alameda and Contra Costa County. I think it may have been a sheriff's race in Contra Costa County that was decided by the primary, and had no secondary runoff election.
Yeah.
So again, you see the importance of coming out to vote either early or kind of instituting a system like this. So we have another question in the chat as well. Does ranked choice voting to city council?
Does it apply to the city council races? Yes. And the school board election, and so mayor, city council, school board, city attorney, city auditor, when we elect them, all of our city offices are ranked choice. Yeah.
And I have another question. So
Yes.
how many cities, or how about this? Where is ranked choice? Where else is ranked choice voting being utilized in the United States?
So there's a number of cities in California. It tends to be clustered here in the Bay Area, San Francisco and Berkeley and San Leandro. I think there may be one other in Alameda County, but in Alameda, the city of Alameda it has it on the ballot this time around to institute ranked choice voting. There are some other places in California that I can't remember. There are a couple of places around the country. I was talking to my son today who lives in Seattle, and he said in Seattle, it is on the ballot there to adopt ranked choice voting. So I think there are a number of places that are adopting it. It's a place where Oakland was kind of on the cutting edge of reforms and voting reforms, and more places are adopting ranked choice voting now for their local elections. Alaska just used ranked choice voting for their statewide elections.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which resulted in the first indigenous person being elected to the House of Representatives and defeated actually Sarah Palin, I believe.
I believe so. I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
I have League of Women Voters behind me, so I'm going to be try to be.
Well, if we have, I think we have one more question in the chat box, and then I'll ask
Sure.
you a follow-up
Okay.
question. I think that question is, so do the votes, despite the rank, have equal weight?
So each person's ballot gets counted once in each round of counting. So wherever your ballot is, it only counts one time, and that is it's the first time for your first choice vote, and if that person has the lowest number of votes after the first round of voting, and no one has a majority of the votes, then we look at your second choice vote. Your second, and so your ballot is always counted once. So each ballot is counted one time, and the first time it's for your first choice vote, and it stays there as long as that candidate stays in the election. So yes, ballots count the same. Each person's ballot counts once is the real answer to that.
But if in the first round, let's say Peyton gets over 50% of the first place votes, then the election is over. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. And Peyton is elected, and he is our new representative.
Right. Okay.
Yes. So yeah.
There's another one that says, how do you know which candidates are teaming up? Is that obvious? Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's in their campaign material. I've heard it most at candidate forums. So if you go to a candidate forum, the candidates will recognize each other. But sometimes it's in, I'm trying to think if I've ever seen it in official campaign material. I can't remember an instance where I have, but they probably have done that too. Yeah.
All right. I have a more general question, but if there are any more real practical questions, I'd like to, if there are any in the Q&A. We definitely want to make sure we get those. All right. So you were involved in this push towards ranked choice voting, and kind of talked about at the beginning. We see democracy across our nation and even this world kind of receding and at times being attacked. And so I really have a question, for us who are inheritors of, the women's suffrage movement, the civil rights movement. Like how do you see those kind of movements connecting up to something like ranked choice voting and civic engagement in general?
That's a great question. And, as somebody, my organization, the League of Women Voters, grew out of the women's suffrage movement. I want to acknowledge that only brought the vote to women who were white and middle class. So it took the civil rights movement to expand the vote, the franchise, to more people. I think we're all working towards ensuring that as many people are involved in making these decisions as possible, not just women, not just people of color, but we want everybody in the community engaged in making these decisions. And that is the root of why we asked for ranked choice voting in Oakland. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it is better than the system where we were making decisions at the primary election. Mm-hmm. So I like this better, and I'm all for looking at what's coming next, but let's keep ensuring that more people are engaged and more people are making these decisions together.
And we also want to make sure too that people are informed when they're making these decisions, in particularly voting, not just that you, with ranked choice voting, not just that you vote, but really how you actually vote matters as well. There is a level of strategy and all of that's attached to it. Peyton, you have your hand up, I see.
Yeah. So is there any downside of ranked choice voting, or what kind of criticisms or pushbacks have you heard, if any at all, around ranked choice voting?
So the main criticism I've heard to ranked choice voting is from the candidates, and it tends to be the biggest criticism is from candidates who were used to running campaigns under the old style, and they had to change their campaign style, and they didn't want to. And my response was kind of, that's your problem. that we think this is a better system for the voters. And so if you want to represent the voters and the people in Oakland, then you need to change the way you run your campaigns to work with the way we vote. Sometimes people talk about being confused, and I think what I've seen is people are trying to overthink. Instead of just saying, I'm just going to rank the candidates from my very favorite to the person I can live with, they overthink about, maybe if I vote for somebody twice, they'll get twice as many votes or something like that. And that's not the case. It simply is vote for the candidate you like the most as number one, and then just keep going until you get to number 5, or you run out of people that you think you could live with. If it runs out before 5, then you stop at that number. So you rank down to the person that the candidate you could live with in that office. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have another question as well. Maybe a little bit onto a broader subject, which is around gerrymandering, right? Mm-hmm. So as we're thinking about ways to get more of the voter electorate involved, especially when we're talking about representatives of diverse communities, ranked choice voting is an excellent tool. But how do we also address, the gerrymandering that happens that is strategic towards limiting that voter electorate, right? Into a certain demographic or socioeconomic status. What kinds of conversations or strategies have you seen with the League of Women Voters, or nationally, those efforts around there, Helen?
So I think, I mean, I say it at the biggest level, I'd say pass the Voting Rights Act extension that's in Congress right now. That would be the best thing we could do for gerrymandering, or to solve the problem of gerrymandering, because it would make it a lot harder to do the kind of racial and political gerrymandering that's going on in other parts of the country. I have to say, in California, that didn't happen. We have an independent Citizens Redistricting Commission that did our state redistricting, and it's not perfect. There is no redistricting that is going to be perfect, but it certainly did a pretty darn good job of keeping communities whole. In Oakland, we did, for the very first time, we did the same thing, and I think we again did a pretty good job. So I think if we put redistricting in the hands of people instead of the politicians, we end up with a better system. That's easier said than done. In California, we were able to pass the initiative to do that. Other states either don't have an initiative, or the legislature is not willing to let go of that power. So I think we keep advocating in every single way we can to try to ensure that voting rights are protected everywhere around the country, and they are definitely being challenged. And redistricting is one piece of it, but there's all kinds of other things going on that are really scary.
Yeah. So, another question in the chat about ranked choice voting specifically. It says,
Sure.
if the people whom I rank 4th and 5th are given the 1st and 2nd most votes, it's possible that my vote won't be counted, right? In other words, there is a higher probability that one of my votes will get counted, but not a guarantee.
Well, your vote gets counted. Your vote always counts. Your vote gets counted, and it will be counted for your first choice vote. If that person is eliminated, then we go to your second choice vote. And it may be that your first, second, and third choice votes get eliminated in the process of counting, and so we get to your 4th or your 5th. But it could also be that your first choice person stays in for a long time, and that just stays there. So your vote always counts.
And then there was a follow-up to that question that says, many think that we need a third party. Do you think choice voting could impact our likelihood of getting a third party?
It could. I will say our local elections are nonpartisan, so that we don't know we don't have the parties endorse candidates, but the candidates aren't technically partisan. They are nonpartisan. I think Alaska showed us that we can get some non-traditional people elected, and so it might ranked choice voting at a bigger level might help bring more people into the system that way. Alaska is a small state compared to California in terms of number of people, so it's a little bit hard to generalize, but it is a case where it did happen.
I mean, to add to that, because you can rank more than one person, you have the opportunity to get out of some of the polarization, because you're not just limited to this one vote or else, which then opens up, I would say, then the possibility of a different kind of candidate as your second choice. I'm sure that in certain areas, probably neither Democrats nor Republicans like the prospect of that, because of the possibilities that it might open. But I can see what you're saying and what happened in Alaska. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I do. They started to come. It says, where can we go to find more info about candidates running for city council and the school board?
And I said votersedge.org. Yes, we'll tell you.
So again, to plug that, if you go to votageedge.org, Helen has told us that if we put in our address, it will basically populate a list of all that we would be voting for in our upcoming election,
Right.
and give resources, I think, for each candidate.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I will say that some of the candidates have not chosen to put their information on there. It's up to the candidates or the campaign to do it. So you can see which candidates want to share their information that way.
All right. I wanted to we're getting ready to wrap up. But I want to just say personally, this is a very important forum that I think we should have. I grew up in a household that was very civically minded. Some of my first experiences in politics and in all of this stuff was at the local level, and my mother hammering to me how often in America we look towards the national kinds of elections and ignore what's happening in our own locations, in our own cities, in our own city councils. And I'll say this briefly. There was a time when they were going to put a landfill by our neighborhood, and my mother went out persistently to city council meetings to voice complaints and tried to get folks from the neighborhood out. They put her on the Huntsville Times and showed her looking all crazy, because that's the kind of collusion that you have sometimes, because they really wanted to put that landfill there. But ultimately the landfill didn't make it because she was, civically engaged. And so what I learned from that it is important to know who your city council people are. How do they get elected? What are the processes of putting things in place that happen in our city? And so one of our hopes is for this ranked choice voting is that we could be a bit more civically engaged and understand exactly what we can do in our own spaces, in particular locally, to affect change, not just in a mayor's election, but also within our communities. And so I just want to thank you, Helen, for really just extending yourself and giving us some history and some background on ranked choice voting, and also what it means democratically speaking in a time such as this that we're living in. And I'd be remiss not to thank Peyton as well for helping to put all of this together in Faith in Action.
Definitely.
So yes.
Definitely, it's my pleasure. And, I love talking about these subjects. So invite me again. I'd love to talk about voting.
Thank you, Peyton. I wanna play a short little section of a song. My favorite jazz artist of all time is Pharaoh Sanders. He's a tenor saxophonist. He passed away this weekend. And he has this song called "You've Got to Have Freedom," and part of that is just this drum beat of freedom that exists in every human being and in communities throughout the world. And I feel like he really embodied that in this particular section of the song. And so I just wanted to play a little small section of the song for us before we end. He repeats, "Got to have freedom." got to have freedom, got to have freedom, got to have, and then ultimately just blows his horn. And that's the impulse, right? That's the impulse from the repetition, the years of struggle, the years of doing the same thing over and over and over. Ultimately, there's this wellspring of energy that words cannot describe, really, of what freedom actually is. But we're still in the process of trying to grasp it and be a bit more democratic while we do so. So I just wanted to leave that with y'all. Thank you, Peyton, for giving me the opportunity to play my jazz master, whom I love and miss now dearly, Pharaoh Sanders.
Absolutely. Again, thank you everybody for coming out. I think always, as we think of more tools and stuff to be able to express our passions for democracy, we cannot forget the most important crux, which is actually showing up to vote and our loved ones to show up to vote as well. So take this educational opportunity and spread it, because we have a lot of folks that are used to seeing a certain kind of ballot. And if they see ranked choice on the ballot, it may not be immediately self-explanatory. We know how difficult it is to use the internet now. For me, I was born with the internet and, it comes easy, but I know helping my parents, my grandparents, sometimes it can get difficult. Same thing with the ballot, right? And we now have this wonderful tool of being able to rank first, second, and third. And we want to make sure that everybody in our community is able to utilize that tool to the fullness, and that it's a benefit and not a setback or a disadvantage or anything confusing. So do make sure that you call a loved one, you explain to them what you've learned here this evening, you keep yourself informed, and you pay it forward and you pass it forward. With that, we'll say good evening and thank you very much. Helen, I don't know if you had any final words that you wanted to give.
No, just thank you very much. This was really fun. I enjoyed it.
Alrighty. Thank you all so much. Take care and have a great evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
And maybe Pastor Sales, you can play the music on the way out. All right, everybody, you have the opportunity to unmute yourself now if you would like to. We just had to do that for people that were coming in and out, so we didn't have interference. But thank you for all your comments in the chat. And if you want to unmute yourself and say some words, please feel free.
Maybe they just wanted to listen to some Pharaoh.
I think so. Alrighty. So
All
at
right.
this point, Pastor Sales, I'll ask you just to stick around for about two or three more minutes
Yep.
right after this. Everybody else, thank you so much for coming this evening. Going to excuse you from the Zoom room and invite you into the rest of your evenings. I think it's the best way to put it. So,
That's great.
thank you so much for coming. Alrighty. Hi, Carol. Did you come back?
Oh, yeah,
Carol, okay.
I did.
Okay.
Hi. Thanks for coming back. How can we help you?
Oh, I wanted to know, is there going to be an increase in the number of forums, candidate forums?
We're, we're working on that, Sister Sims. We're working on that.
Okay.
We're working on it. I will let you know. I'll let you know. Thank you for coming out this evening, though.
Alrighty.
All right.
Take care, Sister Carol.
Okay.
Alrighty. How you feel, Pastor Sales?
I don't know. I think it went good. I think it went all right. We had I think I saw about 27 or so. I think the highest I saw was around that. So definitely more than the 6 this morning. So it looks like some calls were effective and did go out. Thank goodness for that. I thought that you did a great job, moderating with the questions and adding some others. And it seemed like people really did have some very practical questions, regarding ranked choice voting. So I hope that would be helpful to them, and then they can share it with others. What about you?
No, I thought it went really well. The program ran smoothly, and people were engaged in the chat, which was excellent.
Oh, do we want to still record?
Oh,